Welcome everyone to our PG Packers News Postgame live chat alongside Ryan Wood. I am Olivia Reiner. Today we're here to wrap up the Packers' big 40-14 victory over the Tennessee Titans. We'll hit on everything that you needed to know from last night's game in just a moment. However, before we begin, as always, you can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. Ryan and I want to hear from you. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. Last night, Packers fans had been waiting for rookie running back A.J. Dillon to finally get some opportunities on the ground, and he delivered. Head coach Matt LaFleur delivered too, giving him lots of opportunities. 21 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. He plowed through that Lambeau Field snow and was able to take some big yardage up for the Packers offense. What set A.J. Dillon up for a big night?
Yeah, Olivia, it's going to sound really simple, and I don't mean this in any way facetiously. He's good. I mean, he's really good. Like, he's 250 pounds. He's 4'5'3". He's got burst at that size. You know, that 4th and 1 touchdown for 30 yards, if you look at it, at the line of scrimmage, he just runs out of one tackle because the guy dives on his leg, which is what you have to do against that size. And then if you look at Kenny Vaccaro, the angle that he took from across the field, it was literally like there's no way a guy this big can run this fast. So this is the angle I have to take. I mean, these safeties have been calculating such things in their minds their entire lives. That's part of the position. And by the time he went, I mean, he shallow cut the angle. And by the time he went to tackle him, he's grasping at air because A.J. Dillon's already by. The guy's fast. He's not just big. But to me, what was the most impressive run of the night was that 5-yard touchdown where he just plowed over 3 Titans defenders. He had no business getting to the end zone on that play. I mean, he was stopped at the line of scrimmage. He knocks over a defensive end. He runs through a defensive back, and then another defensive back or linebacker, another defender comes from behind. They sandwich him at the goal line. He still gets the last 2 yards. Physical specimen. That's what he is. He's really good. We haven't seen him this season because the Packers haven't needed to use him. They didn't need to see him, but that doesn't mean he's not good. He's got a bright future.
Not only were the Packers successful on the ground, they also had a really strong night through the air. Wide receiver Davante Adams had 11 catches for 142 yards and 3 touchdowns. He is just 1 touchdown away from tying the Packers' single-season touchdown record. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers also had a really good night feeding the ball to Davante Adams, 128.1 passer rating. That's his 13th game this season, posting 100-plus passer rating. The last time he did that was back in 2011 when he won the MVP. Why was Adams and Rodgers' connection so electric last night?
Yeah, I should ask you, Olivia, because you wrote the story. It was a really good one on Packers News, but it's just been this way all season. It's like Groundhog Day to the nth degree every second. And all right, so just because you run out of superlatives to talk about Davante Adams. I mean, I don't know what else to say about this guy at this point. Now that's as a writer, he makes our jobs really, really difficult because there's only so many words, and what he does, it's beyond that. So just look at the numbers. He's played 16 games this season. He's got 19 touchdowns if you count the 2 playoff games in January because he missed 2 in the regular season. He's got 19 touchdowns this calendar year. He's got 126 catches this calendar year, going back to the postseason. He's got over 1,600 yards. He's had, in 9 of those games, he's had at least 100 yards. He's had at least 1 touchdown in 11 of those games. In 13 of those games, he's had a half dozen catches. Right now, he woke up this morning. He's top 3 in the league in yards with 1,328. He's got 109 catches, which is also 3rd. He's 17 touchdowns, leads the league. The last time a receiver was top 3, finished the season top 3 in all 3 major statistical categories was Antonio Brown in 2014. Go on and on and on. He's the best receiver in the league right now. I'm not sure it's him and Tyreek Hill, but everyone else it's not particularly close. And it reminds me, Olivia, a little bit of the 2016 when Matt Ryan won MVP for the Falcons. But Julio Jones was the best player on that Falcons offense, on that Falcons team. Aaron Rodgers very well might be nearing a 3rd MVP, and it's well-deserved. But the best player on this offense and the best player on this team this season has been Davante Adams.
Packers offense had a very strong night between Dillon, Adams, Rodgers. However, the Packers defense also played a really strong game. A lot of complimentary football last night. The Packers defense forced 2 interceptions, one from safety Darnell Savage Jr. and inside linebacker Christian Kirksey. Plus, they have to thank the outside linebackers in the defensive front for getting pressure on quarterback Ryan Tannehill. Not only was the Packers defense impressive against the pass, they were also great at stopping the run. They held running back Derrick Henry to under 100 rushing yards. Why was the Packers defense able to stop the Titans in both the run and the pass?
Because there wasn't a weak spot in the entire defense. You look at, the defensive line played well. The Smiths got pressure. You knew coming in that it was going to be an island night for Jair Alexander and Kevin King because you got to load up against the run. Both guys were very, very good. The second level, they've been getting better and better all season. The inside linebackers played very well last night. They were solid. Christian Kirksey has the interception. Chris Barnes has just continued to ascend, and Kamal Martin's right there along with him. Darnell Savage Jr. is taking off, very much like Rashawn Gary is taking off. Both of those first-round picks from last season, they had slow starts to their year. I don't know if it was not getting the full off-season. That first full off-season that you get as a second-year player, it's monumental to your development. So not getting that probably hurt both those guys, but both of those guys in the second half of the season have just taken off. Jerry Gray said mid-November when Darnell Savage Jr. had 0 interceptions that he was going to end the season with 4. It sounded ludicrous at the time, not having a pick. Well, here he is. He's got 4 picks. If he inverted his December and September, Darnell Savage Jr. very well might be a Pro Bowler. That's how good he's been of late. So, yeah, there's not a weakness. There was not a weakness on this defense last night. If that continues, this is a team that goes a very long way.
Packers fans, I know you're impatient. You've been waiting for the Packers to clinch the top seed in the NFC. They did not do it last night. Thanks to the Seattle Seahawks victory over the Los Angeles Rams, the Packers are going to have to wait another week before they are able to do so. With the win against the Chicago Bears, the Packers can come away with that top seed. How likely is it that the Packers get that top seed, the first round bye, and home field advantage through the playoffs?
Oh, I think it's going to happen. I do. I don't see them losing to Chicago. Seattle also has to beat San Francisco, which is no certainty at all. I think it's going to happen, and we'll just have to see what that means for the Bears because they've obviously got some playoff scenarios of their own that they're trying to work in. I think it's going to be really interesting. When you talk to this Packers team against this Bears team, the first thing you think of is offense versus defense. The Packers with Aaron Rodgers against Khalil Mack and that defense. I think it's going to be really interesting to see this Packers defense that is now resurgent, not just last night, but the last few weeks, really kind of peaking last night against a Bears offense, with Mitch Trubisky that has scored 30 points, I think, 4 straight games. And how for real is this Packers defense? How for real is the Bears offense? That to me is going to be the real litmus test this week.
That question will be answered in just about a week, and we'll get you all set, ready to go for that game this upcoming week with more live streams. However, before we get ahead of ourselves here, let's go over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions. We will start with Eddie over on Facebook. Good morning, Eddie. Eddie wants to know, was running back A.J. Dillon's coming out party the beginning of the end for running back Jamal Williams? Williams was inactive last night as he has been dealing with a quad injury all week that he sustained last weekend against the Carolina Panthers. The fact that Jamal Williams was inactive allowed A.J. Dillon to get a lot more touches, 21 carries last night. When Jamal Williams is healthy enough to return to the Packers lineup, how is that going to affect A.J. Dillon's touches?
Yeah, well, I asked Matt LaFleur last night if A.J. Dillon had earned more than 1 carry going forward because he had the 1 carry for 18 yards against the Panthers, and that was it. And he said, yeah, I think so. So regardless of what the depth chart looks like, I think that A.J. Dillon is going to be here to stay in some capacity. Now, it's going to be a challenge because they've got 3, in Matt LaFleur's view, starting running backs in that backfield with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and A.J. Dillon. All 3 of those guys are starting running backs. So there's only one football. And finding enough opportunities to fit all 3 into the offense is not going to be easy. But when A.J. Dillon is showing what he showed last night, you can't just keep him on the sideline. I think long-term it's going to be really interesting. Maybe A.J. Dillon spells the end for Aaron Jones. I mean, as tempting as it has to be to have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the same offense next year. I mean, for obvious reasons, The reality is that this is not monopoly money. The salary cap is real. There's things you can do to manipulate it. But Aaron Jones is going to get top dollar on the market, as he should. He's a dynamic superstar running back. If you feel like you've got a guy that can be the lead horse and really be the headliner of your run game, I don't know if you pay top dollar for a running back to come back. It's going to be really interesting to see what kind of dynamic that becomes.
The Packers' free agency in 2020 is going to be something to certainly keep an eye on. We'll keep you updated over on Packers News, of course, as those discussions continue, as Aaron Jones continues his contract negotiation with the Packers. Thanks so much, Eddie, for your question. We appreciate it. Let's go over to Joel on Facebook. Joel points out that the Packers found Derrick Henry's weakness. He can't run in the snow. Do we agree? Ryan, I want to extrapolate that thought a little bit more. Packers don't really have much of a home field advantage, quote unquote, when it comes to having fans in the stands, although last night they had probably the most fans they've ever had in the stadium this season, given the fact that they had 450 frontline workers in the stands, plus their immediate household families, equating to about 1,000 people in the stands. Regardless, the Packers have home field advantage due to the weather, especially in December, and going into the playoffs, the potential to secure the top seed and home field advantage throughout the playoffs is very tempting when it comes to bringing in warm weather teams, dome teams, to Lambeau Field for the playoffs. A team like the Tennessee Titans, certainly one example. However, you look at teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you look at the New Orleans Saints even, who play in a dome. How does having that home field advantage through the playoffs impact what other opposing teams can do, including the run game, due to the weather?
Yeah, Devontae Adams said it last night that he thought that the Titans seemed a step slow in the snow. I mean, it seemed to him like the weather did have an impact that it didn't for the Packers, because they don't just practice in this and play in this; they live in this. And this is what they do. So I don't think there's any question that in a COVID-19 season where there are really no crowds to create a home field advantage, the climate can certainly be a home field advantage. Now, as far as Derrick Henry, I don't know his history of playing in snow, so it's hard for me to say. I would find it doubtful that a big, powerful running back like that can't play in snow. But what I saw last night, I haven't gone back and watched the film yet, but Matt LaFleur said during the week, how do you defend Derrick Henry? And let's not forget, Matt LaFleur knows the answer to that question very, very well, because he was for a season Derrick Henry's offensive coordinator. He knows Derrick Henry very well. And he said two things. You have to swarm him and then finish the tackle. And that's exactly what it seemed like this Packers defense did last night. I don't remember in the past 2 years ever watching this Packers run defense be so sound with their gaps and just not a guy out of place. That's been the issue for a long time, is guys not doing their job, guys out of place. They swarmed around him. They were really they had a lot of gap integrity. And then they finished tackles. And it was a really, really good. I wouldn't say Derrick Henry just wasn't himself because of the snow. I think the Packers defense had a lot to do with that.
Derrick Henry, the longest game that he was able to post last night was for about 10 yards. He was able to do it just a couple of times. Big, big win there for the Packers run defense. Thanks so much, Joel, for your question. Let's continue our conversation going back to Aaron Jones. Rod wants to know if the Packers can or would franchise tag Aaron Jones. If the Packers can't come to a long-term agreement with Aaron Jones, how likely is it that they would use the franchise tag on him?
It's not impossible. I wouldn't myself expect that to happen, and that's not based on any reporting. That's just it's based on the fact that they for a fraction of the cost, you can have A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams back, and that's really good running back room. That's not anything like what it would be with Aaron Jones, don't get me wrong, but at some point you do have to make financial decisions, and a franchise tag, it's exactly that. So I wouldn't expect it, but it's not impossible because Aaron Jones is that good. I mean, if you want to franchise tag any running back, it would be a guy like Aaron Jones. You never say never, but I think at the end of the day, it's less likely to happen than it is.
Thanks, Rod, for your question. Let's go over to Mike on Facebook. Mike says, any word on Snacks Harrison, the former Seahawks defensive lineman, landing in Green Bay today? A report came out yesterday, I believe, from the NFL Network, and then Damon Harrison confirmed it himself, essentially, on Twitter that he had requested his own release from the Seahawks after he wasn't active in the game yesterday against the Los Angeles Rams. The Packers had shown interest reportedly in Harrison. They wanted to bring him in for a workout in early October. However, Harrison had a workout with the Seahawks the day before, and he decided to sign with their practice squad. He ultimately played about 7 or so games with the Seahawks before his release. Now he is set to he has to pass through waivers first, and if no team claims him, then he has an opportunity to become a free agent. The Packers are 29th in the waiver priority order. How likely is it that they would be interested in defensive line help with someone like Harrison?
Well, we know that they were interested in defensive line help at the time that he was available because they obviously claimed Anthony Rush, and so they were on the market for that. I would guess that it's not going to happen. I this late in the season, I don't think it's likely, but there was connection. There was speculation that he was a guy of interest a month ago or whenever that he was available. He spurned the Packers. I mean, he chose the Seahawks over the Packers. I don't think that has anything to do with a decision to bring him back or not, but I would guess it's unlikely.
Thanks, Mike, for your question. Let's go over to Iron over on YouTube. Iron says that, what can be said of the performance from the special teams unit last night, and are there any concerns going forward? The Packers special teams unit didn't necessarily do anything to hurt the Packers, which is, in their eyes, I suppose, a good thing, especially for that unit in which they have given up punt returns for touchdowns, kickoff returns for touchdowns. Last night, it almost turned bad when Mason Crosby's field goal attempt was blocked. Whoever recovered the ball, the Titans recovered the ball, and they almost returned for a touchdown. However, that was called off after it was found that a Titans player jumped out offsides on the field goal attempt. How concerning is these Packers special teams' lack of anything special, really, in last night's game?
You know, a unit is bad when it's a different thing every week. You know, a bad defense might have breakdowns in the secondary one week, 0 pass rush the next week, a ton of missed tackles the next week. It's just one thing after another. The special teams unit, it's a different thing every week. It's the coverage units. It's the punting, almost getting a punt blocked when you're in the shadow of your goal line. Last night, yeah, the field goal block got wiped out because of a late Christmas gift by the officials, but they still missed a pair of extra points. And in a 40-14 game, that doesn't hurt you, obviously. But you can't bank on that not hurting you in January when games are close. 1 point, 2 points. They left 2 points on the board last night. It should have been 42-14. 2 points can be your season. So it's a different thing every week. It's something they haven't gotten fixed. At this point, it's something they're not going to get fixed. I mean, it's going to continue to be an issue. If nothing else, it's going to continue to be a concern. If you're the Packers, you hope it doesn't end up costing you an early trip home. If you're the Packers, you also know it very well could because 2014. So, yeah, you know, it's a problem. An otherwise bona fide, legitimate Super Bowl contender, no question about it. There is that Achilles heel, and everyone knows about it.
Thanks so much for your question. Let's go over to Eric over on Facebook. Eric wants to know, any chance that Matt LaFleur had some inside knowledge that helped this game? I know that isn't usually the case with players who are signed from other teams, quote unquote, sharing info. Matt LaFleur was the Titans offensive coordinator back in 2018. It's been a couple of years, however, he has some familiarity with the offense that they run. How much did his knowledge of the Titans help the Packers yesterday in their victory?
Well, knowledge goes both ways. Mike Vrabel had inside knowledge of Matt LaFleur. So I thought what was interesting about that, because, yes, that is a dynamic here. Both head coaches know each other very, very well. You saw that, though, last year with the Packers and the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur know each other very, very well. Matt LaFleur and Robert Saleh, the defense coordinator in San Francisco, know each other very, very well. And last year in 2 meetings, Matt LaFleur had to hand it to him. I think he'd be the first to tell you that. The 2 blowouts. The fact that, you know, in this circumstance, this dynamic, he handed it to Mike Vrabel, his former boss. I don't know what to make of that. It's a small sample size. I don't know if that's coaching development. I don't know if that's just the personnel. I don't want to make too much out of that, but I did find it interesting. I did find it interesting that last year he struggled in that situation. He was outcoached, and this team was outplayed, and he outcoached it, and his team outplayed in the same exact situation yesterday.
Thanks, Eric, for your question, and thank you all so much for joining us this morning. We will be back later this week to help get you set and ready to go for the Packers game on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. For Ryan Wood, I am Olivia Reiner. We will see you next time.